Here is a cold truth about the money you bleed for, the money you save to secure your old age. The moment you hand over the keys to your life savings to protect your family, you stop being a father, you become a target, and targets apparently do not get a warning before the trigger is pulled. Let me tell you all about how a lifelong worker compensation settlement became a blueprint for my own destruction. Welcome back to Dad, Silent Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember that the people in these stories had every single opportunity to act with basic human decency. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment below, and be sure to subscribe right now. You are going to love it here. My name is Thomas Miller. I am 64 years old. I recently retired after 34 years as a Chief Infrastructure and Structural Integrity Inspector for the state of Montana. My job for over 3 decades was simple. I looked at massive, beautiful structures, concrete bridges, heavy steel dams, and I found the hidden cracks before they caused a catastrophe. I spent my life staring at things that looked perfectly solid on the surface, all while knowing exactly where the rot was hiding underneath. I thought, after a lifetime of that, no human being could ever slip a lie past my eyes. I was entirely wrong. And the person who proved me wrong was a woman who always wore a soft, knitted cream sweater, a woman who brought me homemade apple pies on Sundays, and a woman who called me Dad with a smile that was already calculating the market value of my breathing lungs. It started the way most structural failures do, not with an explosion, but with a quiet shift in the foundation. I had sustained a severe spinal injury 5 years before my retirement. A concrete support beam collapsed during an inspection near Helena. The state settlement was substantial, $520,000. It was locked safely inside a dedicated medical and disability trust fund. That fund was meant to cover my specialized surgical care and long-term rehabilitation for the rest of my days. My wife Martha and I lived comfortably in our old timber-framed house just outside of town. We did not need much. Then came a rainy Tuesday morning in May. I was sitting at my oak desk in the study. I was reviewing my annual trust statements. I noticed a small piece of paper tucked behind the main ledger. It was a formal notification of a trustee amendment request. The document stated that the primary disbursement authority for my medical trust was being transferred. It was moving to an independent property management firm called Bitterroot Holdings LLC. My name was at the bottom of the page. The signature looked identical to mine, the looping T, the sharp angle on the M, the precise dot above the I. But I knew my own hand. I knew the slight tremor that my spinal injury left in my fingers when I signed a heavy document. This signature was too smooth. It was too perfect. It was a beautiful, calculated imitation. The house was completely silent around me. The rain tapped against the glass like a finger demanding attention. I picked up the paper. I held it up to the gray Montana light, and I felt a cold drop of water slide down my spine. The crack in my foundation had just appeared, and the water was already rushing in. The mind is a strange thing when it faces a sudden betrayal. It wants to find an excuse. It wants to believe there has been a clerical error, a massive mistake by a tired bank teller, or a misunderstanding by a distant state bureaucrat. But 34 years of inspecting failing structures taught me a hard lesson. Numbers do not lie, and signatures do not paint themselves onto legal documents by accident. I set the paper down on the desk. I looked out the window at the gravel driveway. A dusty blue pickup truck pulled up. It splashed mud against the old wooden fence. It was my son, Luke. Luke is 32 years old. He is a master carpenter, a giant of a man with calloused hands, a soft heart, and the kind of naive honesty that makes you worry about him the moment he steps outside his small hometown. He works 12 hours a day shaping timber, putting his sweat into houses he will never own, believing that hard work is the only currency that matters in this life. Behind him, stepping out of the passenger side, was Chloe. Chloe had been married to Luke for 3 short years. She was beautiful in that quiet, understated way that thrives in small Montana valleys. She wore her signature cream-colored knitted sweater. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat clip. She was carrying a glass baking dish wrapped in a clean white towel. She was laughing at something Luke said. She leaned against his broad shoulder like he was the center of her entire universe. Watching them walk up the porch steps, my chest tightened. Luke looked so happy. He looked like a man who had finally found his anchor. But as they entered the kitchen, Martha greeted them with her usual warmth. Her hands immediately took the warm dish from Chloe. I stood in the doorway of my study. I watched the performance. Chloe turned her head and saw me. Her smile remained, but her eyes did not join in. She held my gaze for a fraction of a second too long. It was the same look a buyer gives a piece of land when they are checking the boundaries, making sure the old owner is not looking. She tilted her head and spoke softly. "Thomas, you look a little tired today. Is your back flaring up again?" We brought over some hot pot roast to save Martha the trouble of cooking. I leaned against the doorframe. I kept my arms crossed to hide the slight tightness in my posture. I forced a calm, measured smile onto my face and replied, "I am doing just fine, Chloe. I am just looking over some old paperwork." She did not flinch, she just smoothed her apron. Her fingers brushed against the fabric of her sweater. She spoke again. "Well, make sure you do not work too hard. You have earned your peace, Dad." Martha looked at me from across the kitchen counter. 38 years of marriage means my wife can read the silence in my breath. She did not say a single word, but her face grew instantly still. She looked at Chloe. Then she looked down at the warm pot roast on the counter, and the air in the room suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. There is a distinct difference between reacting to a threat and managing a structural failure. When a rookie inspector finds a crack in a bridge support, he panics. He yells. He shuts down the road and causes a massive scene. But an old-timer stays quiet. Someone who has seen the weight of the world pressed down on cold iron for 30 years stays completely quiet. He measures the fissure. He tracks the direction of the stress line. And he identifies exactly who put the substandard materials into the foundation in the first place. I did not show that paper to Luke. I did not show it to Martha. To survive a betrayal in a small town, you must keep the circle small. You keep it small until the trap is fully built. If you are holding your coffee right now and waiting to see how this trap snaps shut, take one single second to hit that subscribe button below. Leave a comment about a time your own intuition saved your family. A massive portion of our community watches these breakdowns without subscribing. But your support is the fuel that keeps this channel running. Thank you genuinely. On Wednesday morning, after Luke had driven his truck back out to the timber yard, I walked down to the local hardware store. I did not use my personal cell phone. In a small valley, signals bounce off the same towers, and certain people have a habit of looking at phone bills. I used the old payphone tucked inside the back hallway of the lumber yard, a relic from 1994 that still smelled like cedar shavings and hydraulic oil. I dialed a number I had memorized during my years working state contracts in the capital. Gary Vance answered on the third ring. His voice was gravelly and dry. It carried the unmistakable weight of a man who had spent 40 years looking through the garbage of corporate insurance fraud. "Gary," I said. "It is Thomas Miller. I have a signature problem in western Flathead County." The line went quiet for a long beat. I could hear the faint scratch of a match on the other end. Gary was lighting his morning pipe. "Thomas," he murmured, "you have not called me since we pulled those corrupt contractors off the Interstate 15 project in 2012. If you are calling now, someone is digging a hole they cannot fill. Who is on the paper?" I read him the name of the entity from my trust amendment document. Bitterroot Holdings, LLC. I gave him the county registration number listed at the top of the forged authorization. Gary grunted. "Give me 48 hours, Thomas. Do not talk to the bank. Do not talk to your local sheriff. And whatever you do, do not look at the person who did it any differently than you did yesterday. If they think you are watching, the money will move before I can trace the wire." I hung up the receiver. I stood in the dim light of the lumber hallway. The smell of fresh-cut pine filled my lungs. I looked out at the main street. Chloe was crossing the road. She was carrying a small leather planner. Her face was bright as she waved to the local baker. She looked entirely innocent. She looked like the perfect daughter-in-law. But I had seen the document. The crack was documented. Now, it was just a matter of finding out how far the rot extended into the life of my son. The 48 hours Gary asked for felt like 48 years. When you know a thief is sitting at your table, every meal feels like a rehearsal for a funeral. On Thursday night, Chloe came over again to help Martha with the laundry. She stood in our utility room. She folded my old flannel shirts. She sang a soft church hymn under her breath. I watched her from the hallway mirror. Her movements were precise, gentle, and utterly calm. A person who has a conscience cannot fold the clothes of a man while planning to drain his medical future. A person needs to be entirely hollow inside to manage a performance like that. On Friday morning at exactly 6 o'clock, my home phone rang. I picked it up before the first ring could wake Martha. Gary did not say hello. He went straight to the ledger. Thomas, you need to sit down and listen to me clearly. Bitterroot Holdings LLC was registered 14 months ago in Helena. The managing partner listed on the state portal is Chloe Miller. But she is not alone. There is a secondary guarantor on the account, a man named Marcus Vance. No relation to me, thank God. He is a disbarred real estate broker from Spokane. He served 2 years in a federal penitentiary for equity skimming. I kept my voice flat. My hand gripped the edge of the kitchen counter until my knuckles turned white. What is the link, Gary? Why my trust? Gary sighed. A long, heavy sound over the line. Marcus Vance is the brother of Chloe from her first marriage. A name she dropped when she moved to Montana 4 years ago. They have used this blueprint before. Thomas. They find an older target with liquid assets, usually through a family connection, and they insert themselves into the management structure. The document you found was just step 1. They have already used that forged trustee amendment to apply for a commercial loan. $350,000. They are using your injury settlement as collateral to purchase an abandoned fishing resort up near Condon. The room seemed to shrink. My breath was steady, but my mind was calculating the sheer scale of the malice. They were not just stealing my money. They were using my broken back, the physical pain I endure every single morning when I wake up, to fund a luxury real estate venture for a convicted felon and his sister. Gary continued. The paperwork was finalized on Monday. The loan is scheduled to fund next Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. The moment that money hits Bitterroot Holdings, it is gone. Thomas. It will be moved through 3 different offshore entities before you can even file a police report. Your daughter-in-law is about to liquidate your life, and your son has no idea he is married to the executioner. I looked out the window. The sun was just starting to crest over the Bitterroot Mountains. It painted the snow peaks in shades of deep, bloody crimson. Thank you, Gary, I said quietly. What are you going to do, Thomas? He asked. I looked at my calloused hands. The hands that had rebuilt bridges and secured the safety of thousands of people who never knew my name. I am going to inspect the structure, I said, and then I am going to take it down. There is a cold calculation in the way a predator isolates its prey. In my years as an infrastructure inspector, I watched how water would slowly seep into a single joint of a bridge. It did not attack the whole structure at once. It just cut off one small piece from the rest. It waited until that piece became brittle and broke away. That was exactly what Chloe was doing to my family. It was a crisp Tuesday evening in September. The air coming off the mountain range was sharp and smelled of incoming frost. Luke had been working late at the timber yard for 3 days straight. He looked exhausted. His broad shoulders slouched as he sat on our porch. He nursed a cup of black coffee. Chloe stepped out of their truck. She was holding a small, glossy invitation card. She walked with that light, graceful step. Her smile was perfectly placed as she handed the card to Martha. Martha looked down at the paper. Her reading glasses slid down her nose. Her face went tight. I stood behind her, looking over her shoulder. The invitation was for a private launch party at the Condon Lakeside Lodge. It was the exact property Gary had warned me about. The card listed the founders as Chloe Miller and Marcus Vance. The event was scheduled for the coming Saturday night. Chloe tilted her head. Her face was full of practiced sympathy. She looked at me. Her eyes lingered on my lower back, where the brace sat hidden beneath my flannel shirt. She spoke softly. Dad, Martha, we wanted to tell you about this sooner, but everything happened so fast. We are doing a very small, intimate dinner for the local zoning board and some out-of-town investors. Marcus felt it would be best if we kept the guest list strictly to the core business team. With your back, Thomas, we thought the long drive up the canyon and the cold mountain air would just be too much for you to handle. We wanted to protect your health. The room became completely still. The silence grew heavy, the kind of heavy that happens right before a dam gives way. She was standing in the home I had paid for, looking at the man who had bled for the money she was currently using. And she was telling me I was not welcome at the grand opening of my own destruction. She was using my physical pain, the very injury that funded her scam, as an excuse to bar me from the room. Martha did not look up from the card. Her thumb pressed into the heavy paper until the edges bent. She said, I see. A business meeting. Chloe smiled. She was entirely unaffected by the frost in the air. Exactly, Martha. Just a quick professional dinner. Luke will be there to help with the parking and the heavy lifting. but it is mostly just corporate paperwork. We will bring you some leftovers on Sunday." I looked at my son. Luke was staring down at his boots. His jaw was clenched. He did not look at me. He looked like a man who had been told what to believe, and he was trying his best to convince himself it was the truth. I reached out. I placed my hand gently on the shoulder of Martha. I looked straight into the cold, clear eyes of Chloe. I smiled. It was the professional smile I used when a contractor told me a cracked pillar was just a cosmetic flaw. I told her, "You do what you have to do, Chloe. Business is business. You protect your investment, and I will protect mine." She nodded. She was entirely satisfied with my submission. She turned and walked back to the truck. Her cream sweater disappeared into the autumn twilight. She thought she had locked the door against the old man. She had no idea I already owned the keys to the entire building. The best place to find the truth in Montana is not across a desk. It is on the water. When a man is holding a fly rod, watching the line drift across a deep pool on the Flathead River, his mind slows down, his defenses drop. He can only look at what is right in front of him. On Thursday morning, I woke Luke up at dawn. I told him the trout were running near the old canyon bend. I told him his mother wanted some fresh fish for the freezer. He did not hesitate. He grabbed his waders. He climbed into my truck, and we drove in silence as the fog rose off the river. We waded out into the cold, rushing water. The current pulled against my boots, a familiar, steady weight. For an hour, we did not speak. We just cast our lines. The rhythmic whistle of the graphite rods filled the morning air. Finally, I reeled in my line. I looked at Luke. His face looked older in the gray morning light. The shadows under his eyes were deep. "Luke," I said. My voice was low over the sound of the river. "How are things going with the Bitterroot entity? How is the lodge project up in Condon?" Luke froze mid-cast. He let his line drop into the water. The fly sank uselessly into the current. He did not look at me. He kept his eyes on the far bank. He spoke slowly. "It is going well, Dad. Chloe is handling the administrative side. She is brilliant with numbers. She managed to secure a major development loan from a private group in Helena. We are going to build something real out there." I took a slow breath. The cold air burned my throat. "Did she show you the loan documents, son? Did you sign the banking guarantees?" Luke turned his head. His brow was furrowed in confusion. "No, I did not need to. She is the primary owner of Bitterroot Holdings. My name is on the secondary operations manager line. She showed me the bank confirmation on her tablet last week. It had the official state seal and everything. $500,000. Fully approved. She said it was backed by an old family friend of hers named Marcus." My heart felt like lead in my chest. The betrayal was complete. She had not just lied to me. She had created a digital illusion, a forged bank portal screen, to keep my son blind while she signed his name to a mountain of legal liability. If that loan funded on Tuesday, the state would not just go after Chloe. They would come for Bitterroot Holdings. And the name of my son was stamped right underneath hers on the operational management files. He would be an accomplice to grand larceny before he even saw a single dime. I looked at my boy, the boy I had taught to swing a hammer, the boy who used to sit on my shoulders when we repaired the roof of the old barn. He was entirely innocent, and he was walking straight toward a prison cell with a smile on his face, all because he trusted the woman who slept next to him. I reeled my line all the way in and secured the hook. "Luke," I said. I stepped closer through the rushing water. "I need you to listen to me, and I need you to stay completely calm. We are leaving the river now. We are going to drive to Missoula, and we are going to have a conversation with an old friend of mine." Luke wiped his brow. His voice was rising. "Dad, what is this about? Chloe is just trying to build a future for us. Why are you digging into her business?" I placed my calloused hand on his shoulder. I gripped it tight enough to stop his breath. "Because," I said, "she is not building a future for you, Luke. She is building a scaffold, and she is using my broken back to buy the rope." The water in the Flathead River was cold, but it did not compare to the ice that settled in my chest as we drove toward Missoula. Luke sat in the passenger seat of my truck. He stared straight ahead. His hands gripped his knees so hard his knuckles looked like white stones. He did not ask any more questions. He was a smart boy, and deep down the structural integrity of his reality was already beginning to collapse. He just needed to see the blueprint of the failure. We pulled up behind an old brick building on the edge of the city. Gary Vance was waiting for us in his office. The room smelled of old paper, cold coffee, and stale pipe tobacco. Gary did not waste time with small talk. He looked at Luke with the kind of heavy pity only an old man can give a young soul about to be broken. Gary laid out 3 heavy folders on the desk. He looked at Luke and spoke quietly. "Your father asked me to look at the foundations, son. I am sorry about what I found. Before we dive into the dark details of what was waiting in those folders, do me one quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to Dad's Silent Revenge. We are building a community of people who believe in truth and family protection. It costs you nothing, but it keeps this lighthouse burning. Leave a comment about how you would handle this situation." Gary opened the first folder. It contained a certified copy of the loan application for the Condon Lakeside Lodge. There was the signature of Luke, clear and bold, right next to the signature of Chloe. But underneath his name was a hidden clause. It was a cross-collateralization agreement. It did not just link my medical trust to the property. It stated that if Bitterroot Holdings defaulted on the $350,000 commercial loan, the bank had the immediate legal right to seize the timber yard where Luke worked, including all his personal tools and his trucks. Luke leaned forward. His breath caught in his throat. "I did not sign that," he whispered. "I swear to you, Dad, I never saw that page." Gary flipped to the next document. It was a series of text messages obtained through a state financial crimes subpoena between Chloe and Marcus Vance. The messages dated back 6 months. They discussed my health, my medical settlement, and how long they needed to keep Luke compliant before they could execute a strategic default. They planned to move the money to an account registered in Belize. One text from Chloe read, "The old man is too stiff to notice the signatures, and Luke believes everything I tell him. We close the deal on Tuesday and then we exit." Luke stared at the words on the paper. The silence in the room was absolute, the kind of silence that exists inside a house right after a tornado rips the roof off. He did not cry. He did not scream. His face just went completely gray. His eyes lost their light. 3 years of a beautiful marriage turned into ashes right in front of him. Gary looked at me. "The bank verification is complete, Thomas. The State Commercial Crimes Unit has already flagged the transaction based on the forged trustee document you provided. The escrow hold is active. The money is frozen. But Chloe does not know it yet. She thinks the funds will clear into her account on Tuesday morning." I stood up from my chair. I looked at my son. His entire world had just been systematically dismantled. I placed my heavy hand on his shoulder. "Now, Luke," I said. My voice was steady and cold. "We are going to go back to the house, and we are going to wait for Monday morning." The weekend passed like a slow execution. Chloe stayed at the apartment of her brother up in Condon, supposedly finalizing the decorations for the big launch party. Luke stayed in his old bedroom at our house. He did not sleep. I could hear the floorboards creaking through the night as he walked back and forth, a ghost inside his own life. Martha sat in the kitchen, her rosary beads clicking in the dark. Her heart was breaking for her boy, but her mind was entirely aligned with mine. On Monday morning at exactly 8 o'clock, I sat at the kitchen table. The autumn sun was striking the mountain peaks. It cast long, sharp shadows across our valley. Luke sat opposite me. His face was hollow. His eyes were fixed on the black rotary phone resting on the counter. At 8:45, the phone rang. The sound cut through the kitchen like a gunshot. I looked at Luke. "Answer it," I said quietly. "Act normal. Let her tell you she is at the bank." Luke picked up the receiver with a trembling hand. He cleared his throat. "Hello, Chloe," he said. His voice was flat, empty of the warmth he usually carried. On the other end, the voice of Chloe came through loud enough for me to hear. She sounded breathless, excited. Her words rushed together. "Luke, sweetie, I am at the county title office in Missoula right now with Marcus and the escrow officer. We are about to sign the final deed papers for the lodge. The bank said there is a minor technical hold on the wire transfer from the trust of your dad. They need a verbal verification from Thomas to release the final clearance. Can you put your dad on the phone? It will only take a second." Luke looked at me. His eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and absolute disgust. He handed me the phone without a single word. I took the receiver. I pressed it to my ear. "Chloe," I said pleasantly. "Good morning." "Thomas," she said. Her voice instantly dropped into that soft, sweet tone she used when she brought me apple pies. "Oh, thank goodness you are there. There is just a silly little banking glitch with the property management account. The clerk here says the medical trust has a security hold on it. Could you just tell them that you authorized the disbursement to Bitterroot Holdings? We are standing right here at the counter and we just need your word to close the deal. I leaned back in my chair. I looked out the window at the old barn, the timber structures I had spent my life maintaining. I am afraid I cannot do that, Chloe, I said. My voice was very low, very calm, and entirely devoid of emotion. There was a short pause on the line. The background noise of the title office seemed to fade away. What do you mean, Thomas? She asked. A tiny razor-sharp edge of panic crept into her sweet delivery. I mean that the signature on the trustee amendment request was far too perfect, I said. You see, Chloe, my spinal injury leaves a tremor in my fingers when I sign a legal document. A real inspector always notices when a crack has been covered up with fresh paint. The silence that followed lasted 5 full seconds. When her voice came back, the cream sweater was gone. The church hymns were gone. The loving daughter-in-law was dead. Her voice was 2 degrees colder than a Montana winter. You old fool, she hissed. You think you can stop this? The paperwork is already filed with the county. Marcus has the corporate deeds. We will tie you up in court until you do not have a single dollar left for your surgeries. I smiled. It was the real smile, the one that meant the inspection was over and the structure was condemned. I am not stopping the deal, Chloe, I said softly. I am just letting the foundation fail. Give the phone to the escrow officer. There are 2 gentlemen from the State Commercial Crimes Unit standing right behind you, and they would like to see your identification. I hung up the receiver. I did not wait for her to scream. I looked at Luke, and for the first time in 6 days my son took a deep, full breath. The sound of the plastic phone receiver hitting the base was the loudest noise in our kitchen. I stood there. I looked at my hands. I felt the throb in my lower back that always reminded me of what I had given up for this family. Luke sat across from me, his chest heaving. His eyes were pinned to the floorboards as if he expected the earth to swallow him whole. Martha came up behind him. Her touch was soft on his shoulders. Her lips moved in a silent prayer that had no words left to say. We did not speak. We did not have to. The inspection was over, and the demolition had officially begun at the Missoula County Title Office. It took exactly 42 minutes for the next wave to hit. My phone buzzed on the counter, a low, aggressive vibration that sounded like a hornet trapped in a jar. I picked it up. The screen displayed a number from the Missoula County Detention Center. I swiped the line open. Thomas. A voice gasped. It was not Chloe. It was Marcus Vance. His usual smooth, slick broker tone was entirely gone. It was replaced by the raw, ragged panting of a man who had just realized his escape hatch had been welded shut from the outside. Thomas, listen to me. You need to call the state investigators back. This is all a massive misunderstanding. Chloe told me you wanted the property. She told me the trust was yours to invest. I did not forge anything, Thomas. I am just the broker. You have to tell them I am innocent. I listened to him breathe. I listened to the background noise of the county booking room. The clinking of keys. The heavy slam of a reinforced steel security door. The flat murmur of a deputy reading a statement. Marcus, I said. I kept my voice down in that slow, measured tempo I used when a contractor tried to hide rotten timber behind fresh drywall. You should have checked the structural integrity of the promises of your sister before you signed your name to my money. I spent 34 years looking at things that were built to fail. You and Chloe are just a couple of poorly mixed pillars, and today, the weight of the law is pressing down on your chest. He started to scream. A high, panicked sound that cut off sharply as a deputy yelled at him to put the receiver down. The line clicked dead. The next call came on Friday afternoon. This time, it was the state attorney office in Missoula. A woman named Investigator Vance called me, an iron-willed prosecutor who knew exactly how much damage corporate fraud did to working-class families. She laid out the field report. She told me Chloe had been caught red-handed trying to sign the closing papers using a secondary set of falsified trust documents. They had recovered her digital tablet. It contained the software she used to mimic my signature, and the fake bank screens she used to keep Luke compliant. Marcus had cracked within 20 minutes of his arrest. He turned over every text message, every bank routing number, and every detail of their plan to liquidate my medical trust and skip the country before the winter snow hit the pass. Luke looked up at me when I hung up the phone. His face was still pale, but the blind confusion in his eyes had been replaced by something sharp, cold, and entirely solid. "What happens now, Dad?" he asked. I walked over to the gun cabinet. I took out the oilcloth. I started cleaning my old hunting rifle. My movements were steady and rhythmic. Now, son. We let the state finish the work, I said. You go back to the timber yard tomorrow morning. You put your hands on your tools. You build your houses. And you remember that the name Miller still means something clean in this valley. 6 months can change the entire landscape of a mountain valley. The heavy winter snows had finally melted off the high peaks of the Bitterroot Range, leaving the creeks rushing with clear, cold water, and the timber yards busy with the scent of fresh cut pine. The legal system in Montana moves like a glacier, but when it finally drops, it crushes everything in its path. Chloe Miller, or whatever her real name was before she walked into our lives. She pleaded guilty to grand larceny, identity theft, and commercial forgery. The state did not show her an ounce of leniency. The judge was an old-timer who had known my father. He looked down from his bench. He told her that stealing the medical future of a disabled state servant was the lowest form of human rot he had seen in 10 years. She was sentenced to 8 years at the Women Correctional Facility in Billings, with no chance of early release. Marcus Vance went back to the federal system with a 10-year stretch, for violating his previous parole and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The Bitterroot Holdings entity was dissolved by order of the court. Every single asset they had tried to strip from our family was returned to the sole possession of Luke, including the trucks and the timber tools. The $520,000 medical trust remained exactly where it belonged, locked behind a multi-signature escrow account. It required my personal, physical presence and a biometric verification to move a single dime. It was a Saturday morning in May. The sun was rising hot over the eastern ridge. It turned the mountain fog into a bright golden mist. I was sitting on the back porch of our timber house. A mug of black coffee warmed my hands. My back still turned to ice when the weather changed. But the pain felt different now. It felt like an old scar, not an active wound. The dusty blue pickup truck of Luke pulled into the gravel driveway. He climbed out, wearing his work boots and a stained canvas jacket. He looked different than he did during those dark autumn days. His shoulders were squared, his chin was held high, and the naive softness in his face had hardened into the clean, rugged dignity of a man who had survived a collapse and rebuilt his life from the foundation up. He walked up the porch steps. He was carrying a brand new cedar post for our perimeter fence. He set it down with a heavy thud. He looked at me, and he smiled. It was a real smile, the kind that went all the way to his eyes, the kind that had no hidden corners or half-second delays. "Morning, Dad," he said. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. "The north pasture fence is completely repaired. We are ready for the summer timber run." Martha stepped out of the house. She carried a plate of hot biscuits. Her face was peaceful beneath her silver hair. She set the food on the wooden table. She reached out. She straightened the collar of Luke, just like she did when he was a boy. I picked up my coffee mug. I looked out at the valley. The old barn stood tall against the Montana sky. Its hand-hewn beams caught the morning light, perfectly straight, perfectly balanced, and completely secure. We stood there together, 3 generations of survival rooted deep into the soil of this canyon, and as the warmth of the sun hit my face, I realized something important. Some structures have to be broken down to their very core, just so you can see exactly what was holding them up all along. We had paid attention, we had found the crack, and the foundation was finally solid.